Why is your mind still trying to solve in 2026 a problem that should have turned into stardust 10 years ago? You wake up tired, even after sleeping 8 hours. It's not a lack of iron or coffee. It's because your mind spent the entire night trying to sustain the weight of a version of you that no longer exists. Where did you agree to carry this burden? Somewhere in your past, you made a silent decision to survive. You swallowed what hurt. You postponed difficult conversations. You convinced yourself that moving on meant not looking back. And life continued. Careers changed, relationships evolved, years passed, but unresolved experiences do not fade just because time moves forward. Your nervous system keeps a precise record. It does not care about the calendar. It cares about completion. And when something remains unfinished, your mind keeps working overtime, trying to protect you from a threat that may no longer be real. Pause for a moment. Notice your breathing. Notice your shoulders. This is not about weakness, it is about accumulated weight. Today we are going to look directly at what your mind is still carrying and why it is finally time to set it down. In physics, there is a principle that says nothing simply disappears. Energy changes form, but it does not vanish. The same is true for emotional pain. What you swallowed, minimized, rationalized, or buried did not dissolve into nothing. It transformed. Maybe you told yourself it wasn't that bad. Maybe you said other people have it worse. Maybe you decided that being strong meant staying quiet. But the nervous system does not negotiate with denial. When something hurts and you do not process it, your mind stores it as unfinished business. And unfinished business requires energy. Think about how your phone battery drains in the background when too many apps are open. You may not be actively using them, but they are running. They are pulling power. The same happens inside you. That old betrayal, that humiliation, that conversation you replayed for years, they become background processes. Invisible, persistent, expensive. You wake up tired not because you lack discipline, but because part of your cognitive energy is allocated to guarding unresolved pain. It is like holding a muscle slightly contracted all day. Not enough to notice at first, but enough to exhaust you over time. Your brain is designed to protect you. When it detects a threat that was never resolved, it keeps scanning for similar threats. It watches faces more closely. It analyzes tone more intensely. It anticipates rejection, loss, or failure before they happen. That scanning costs energy, a lot of it. And here is the subtle part. You may believe you moved on. You changed cities, you changed jobs, you even changed relationships. But if the emotional charge was never metabolized, your system still treats it as active. The body does not distinguish well between a memory that is unresolved and a danger that is present. If your heart races when you think about that old event, your biology is telling you something simple. This is not finished. Pain that is expressed moves. Pain that is suppressed solidifies. When you suppress it, you do not eliminate it, you convert it. It becomes tension in your shoulders. It becomes impatience with people who did nothing wrong. It becomes overthinking at 2 a.m. It becomes a constant low-level fatigue that no amount of sleep fully repairs. And the cost is not just physical. Creativity requires free energy. So does curiosity. So does intimacy. When a portion of your inner resources is locked into maintaining emotional defenses, there is less available for growth. Notice how often you feel mentally cluttered, not overwhelmed by tasks, but heavy, as if something unnamed is sitting behind your thoughts. That heaviness is not random. It is accumulated charge. There is no moral judgment here. You survived the best way you knew how. At some point, ignoring the pain might have been the only strategy available, but strategies that once protected you can become liabilities if they remain unquestioned. Pause for a moment. Close your eyes if you can. Take one slow breath. As you exhale, ask yourself quietly, what experience in my life still feels unfinished? Do not force an answer. Just notice what rises. A face, a place, a sentence that was never said. When something appears, observe what happens in your body. Does your chest tighten? Does your jaw harden? That reaction is not weakness. It is stored energy. Now imagine that every time you avoid looking at that memory, your system allocates a small percentage of daily power to keeping it contained, not processing it, just containing it. That containment is the cost of conservation. Nothing was lost, it was preserved, and preserved pain does not remain neutral. It shapes perception. If you were betrayed, you may scan for betrayal. If you were dismissed, you may brace for dismissal. Your present becomes filtered through yesterday's unresolved signal. This is why some reactions feel bigger than the moment. The argument today is not only about today, it is amplified by stored charge from years ago. Your nervous system stacks experiences that feel similar. It conserves the pain by linking it. You might think time alone heals. Sometimes it softens the edges, but time without attention often just buries layers deeper. The energy remains compacted. Here is the important shift. The goal is not to erase the past. The goal is to release the energy trapped in it. That begins not with dramatic confrontation, but with honest acknowledgement. When you name something clearly, that hurt me, you stop spending energy pretending it did not. But most people make a quiet mistake right here. They confuse silence with resolution. They believe that because they are no longer talking about it, it is solved. They place it in a mental drawer, close it carefully, and hope it will stay there. The mind, however, does not forget what the body still remembers. And what you put in that drawer does not disappear. It waits. You learned how to survive by organizing your pain. At some point you decided that the fastest way to move forward was to put certain memories away. You created a mental drawer. You labeled it silently, later. Then you closed it and kept living. On the outside it looked like strength. You went to work, you raised children, you paid bills, you showed up at family gatherings. No drama, no collapse, just composure. But inside, that drawer never disappeared. It simply became part of the architecture of your mind. The problem is not that you stored something. The problem is believing that storage equals resolution. Your conscious mind has a calendar. It understands years, decades, milestones. Your subconscious does not. For it, what was never processed is not past. It is active. It is happening in a loop without timestamps. That is why an old comment can still sting as if it was said yesterday. That is why a similar tone of voice from a stranger can trigger a reaction that surprises even you. The drawer may be closed, but it is not locked, and the contents are not quiet. When you suppress an experience, your system does something intelligent but costly. It isolates the memory to prevent overload. It says, "We will deal with this later." But if later never comes, isolation turns into fragmentation. Parts of you remain frozen at the age the event happened. The adult you may understand the context now, but the emotional imprint still lives in the younger version of you who did not have the tools to process it. That split consumes energy. Notice how sometimes you react in ways that feel disproportionate. A small disagreement feels like a threat. A delay feels like abandonment. A mistake feels like humiliation. That intensity often does not belong to the present moment. It belongs to the unopened drawer. And here is the subtle error. Forgetting is not the same as healing. Forgetting is passive. Healing is active. Forgetting is the fading of detail. Healing is the integration of meaning. You might not remember every word that was said during a painful event, but your body remembers the sensation, the tightening in the chest, the heat in the face, the helplessness. Those sensations become templates. They inform how you interpret new situations. Your mind scans the environment constantly. When it detects something that resembles what is in the drawer, even slightly, it pulls the file forward. Not to punish you, but to prepare you. It says, "This looks familiar. Be careful." The issue is that the subconscious cannot distinguish between resemblance and repetition. A similar tone does not mean the same outcome. A new person is not the old person. But if the old file is unresolved, it overlays itself onto the present. Take a quiet moment now. Think of something you believe you are over. Notice your body as you think of it. Do you feel neutral? Or is there still a small contraction somewhere? In the stomach, the throat, the shoulders? That contraction is evidence that the drawer is not empty. Do not judge what you find. just observe it. If there is tightness, say to yourself, "This is still alive in me." That simple acknowledgement begins to reduce the energy required to keep it hidden. Most people avoid opening the drawer because they fear being overwhelmed. They imagine that if they look at what is inside, they will be consumed by it. But avoidance keeps the nervous system in a low-grade state of alert. It is like guarding a door 24 hours a day without ever checking what is behind it. And guarding costs more energy than facing. There is also a deeper layer. When you keep too many drawers closed, your inner space becomes crowded. You may not consciously think about each memory, but the overall sense is heaviness, clutter, mental noise. Your mind is a system. It has limited bandwidth. The more unresolved fragments it must contain, the less clarity you experience. Decisions feel harder, creativity feels blocked, rest feels shallow. This is not weakness. It is cognitive load. Imagine trying to focus on a conversation while multiple muted televisions are playing in the background. You cannot hear the words clearly, but the flicker drains your attention. Unresolved memories act the same way. They flicker beneath awareness. And here is something even more important. When too many drawers remain closed, internal disorder begins to increase. Not in a dramatic way, but subtly. You feel scattered. You start things and do not finish them. You forget small commitments. Your patience shortens. This is not random aging, it is accumulated internal chaos. The mind, like any closed system, moves toward disorder when there is no intentional organization. And unresolved pain is one of the most powerful sources of that hidden disorder. There is a concept in physics called entropy. It describes the natural tendency of any closed system to move toward disorder. If you leave a room untouched for months, dust gathers, objects shift, and chaos slowly increases. Not because someone is actively creating mess, but because without intentional care, disorder wins. Your inner world follows the same principle. When unresolved experiences accumulate and remain unexamined, your mind becomes a closed system filled with unfinished signals. Each one demands a small amount of attention. Each one pulls slightly at your focus. Over time, this creates psychic entropy, a subtle but growing internal chaos. You may not notice it at first. It does not arrive dramatically. It shows up as mental fog, as difficulty concentrating on a book you would have once enjoyed, as irritation that seems to appear out of nowhere, as a constant sense that something is off, even when nothing obvious is wrong. This is what happens when too many unresolved threads are left open. The mind keeps them active in the background, attempting to organize them without your conscious participation. It is like having dozens of tabs open on a browser. None of them are fully loading, but all of them consume memory. You might say, "That happened years ago. Why would it still affect me?" Because the nervous system seeks coherence. It wants a clear story. When there are gaps, when events lack understanding, forgiveness, boundaries, or meaning, the system continues trying to complete the narrative. And incomplete narratives generate noise. Notice how hard it can feel to sit in silence. When external stimulation fades, internal noise becomes more audible. Thoughts jump from one memory to another. Old conversations resurface. Regrets appear. Your attention fragments. That fragmentation is entropy in action. Pause for a moment and pay attention to your mental space right now. Without trying to change anything, just observe the quality of your thoughts. Are they orderly and intentional, or scattered and reactive? There is no need to judge, just notice. Now take a slow breath and imagine your mind as a room. Look around internally. Does it feel spacious or crowded? This simple visualization often reveals more than analysis ever could. When entropy rises, creativity declines. You may want to start something new, a project, a habit, a relationship, but you feel a resistance that is hard to explain. It is not laziness, it is saturation. There is no free cognitive space available for expansion. The system is busy managing internal disorder. Here is the deeper truth. Your mind is not broken, it is overloaded. And overload happens when input exceeds integration. Experiences entered your life, but they were never fully processed, so they remain as loose fragments. Fragments compete for attention. They distort perception. They influence decisions without your awareness. For example, you might hesitate to take a new opportunity because an old failure still echoes inside you. You may not consciously connect the two. You simply feel uncertain, but beneath that uncertainty is unresolved memory shaping present choice. Entropy also affects your emotional baseline. When internal noise is high, your tolerance for stress decreases. Small inconveniences feel larger. You become more reactive, not because you are weaker, but because your buffer is thinner. The mind requires order to generate clarity. Order does not mean perfection, it means integration. It means that past experiences have been digested into lessons rather than stored as raw data. Take another breath and ask yourself quietly, what unresolved situation still feels chaotic inside me? Not painful necessarily, just messy, unclear, unfinished. Let one example come forward. As you think of it, notice whether your thoughts become more scattered or more focused. That shift reveals how much entropy that single memory still generates. The longer something remains undefined, the more space it occupies. Uncertainty expands when not examined. This is why avoidance, while temporarily comforting, increases long-term disorder. Your inner system is always seeking balance. If you do not consciously organize your experiences, the system will attempt to manage them automatically. And automatic management often looks like tension, distraction, or emotional numbness. Over time, entropy can reach a point where you feel disconnected from your own direction. You move through routines, but without a sense of internal alignment. Decisions feel heavy. Motivation feels diluted. This is not a personality flaw. It is accumulated disorder. And when disorder increases, the mind compensates by building defenses. It creates strategies to maintain stability despite the chaos. It tightens control. It avoids certain conversations. It overanalyzes risks. It constructs invisible structures to prevent further disruption. Those structures feel protective at first, but they also consume energy. And eventually, the architecture built to defend you becomes another source of strain. Once internal disorder rises, the mind does something very intelligent. It builds protection. You do not wake up one day and decide to construct emotional walls. They form slowly, brick by brick, after moments that felt overwhelming. A betrayal here, a humiliation there, a disappointment that caught you unprepared. Each event becomes a signal. Do not let this happen again. So you adapt. You become more cautious with your words. You stop asking for help. You rehearse conversations in your head before having them. You anticipate what could go wrong before allowing yourself to feel excitement. None of this is weakness. It is architecture. Defense architecture. It is the invisible structure designed to prevent pain from re-entering your system. And at first it works. You feel safer, more in control, less exposed. But protection always has a cost. Imagine a house built with reinforced concrete walls, thick doors, and no windows. It keeps storms out. It also keeps light out. Airflow becomes limited. The same system that protects you can also restrict you. Notice how often you hold back a true thought because you fear conflict. Notice how often you downplay your needs to avoid rejection. Notice the tension in your body before a difficult conversation. That tension is structural. It is the body preparing to defend. Over time, constant readiness becomes exhausting. Your nervous system was not designed to remain in subtle defense mode all day. When it does, muscles stay slightly contracted. Breathing becomes shallow. Thoughts become vigilant. Even in calm moments, part of you scans for danger. This chronic alertness changes biology. Stress hormones circulate more frequently. Sleep becomes lighter. Recovery slows. You might not connect your tight shoulders or clenched jaw to an old unresolved conflict, but the link is there. The architecture extends beyond the body. It shapes personality. You may describe yourself as independent, but beneath that independence could be a decision made years ago. I cannot rely on anyone. You may pride yourself on being easygoing, but perhaps that is a strategy to avoid triggering disagreement. Defense strategies become identity, and because they are adaptive, you rarely question them. They helped you survive. They reduced immediate harm. But survival mode is not the same as growth mode. Here is something important to see clearly. Every defense consumes energy to maintain. Holding a boundary consciously is healthy. Holding a wall unconsciously is expensive. Take a moment now and reflect on a recurring pattern in your life. Maybe it is difficulty trusting. Maybe it is withdrawing when tension rises. Maybe it is overworking to avoid feeling. As you think about it, ask yourself gently, what was this protecting me from originally? Let your answer surface without forcing it. When you identify the original threat, you begin to see the structure more objectively. The defense is not random. It was logical at the time. But is the same level of protection still necessary now? Many people continue to reinforce walls long after the storm has passed. And here is where escalation quietly happens. You ignore one uncomfortable conversation, then another, then a deeper issue. The body registers each avoidance. The architecture thickens. What began as a small protective habit becomes a rigid system. Rigid systems crack under pressure. When life presents something new, a relationship, an opportunity, a challenge, your defenses evaluate it first, not your curiosity, not your desire. Your defenses ask, is this safe? If uncertainty appears, the structure tightens. This is why growth often feels threatening, even when you consciously want it. The architecture resists change because change introduces unpredictability. Pause and notice your body right now. Is there a place that feels braced? A subtle tightening in the chest or abdomen? That bracing may not be linked to anything happening in this moment. It could simply be habit, the structure holding its form. You can also observe how quickly you prepare arguments in your mind, how fast you justify yourself internally before anyone criticizes you. That mental rehearsal is another beam in the architecture. None of this means you are broken. It means your system learned to defend efficiently, but efficiency in defense can become inefficiency in living. When protection becomes automatic, spontaneity decreases. When walls are high, intimacy struggles. When vigilance dominates, creativity narrows. And yet, there is a paradox here. The same mind that built these defenses believes it is helping you. It does not see itself as an enemy. It sees itself as a guardian. What if the repetition of old fears, the resurfacing of past memories, and the tension you feel are not attacks from within, but signals from a part of you still trying to keep you safe in the only way it knows how? In physics, there is a strange principle. The act of observing changes what is being observed. At the smallest levels of reality, particles behave differently when measured. Observation collapses possibility into something defined. Something similar happens inside you. When a painful memory remains unexamined, it stays in a kind of psychological superposition. It is not one clear event with a defined meaning. It becomes many possibilities at once. It becomes every rejection, every failure, every humiliation. It blends into a general sense of threat. As long as you avoid looking at it directly, it stays undefined. And because it is undefined, your mind treats it as potentially everything. This is why an unresolved experience from years ago can still influence situations that have nothing to do with it. The memory has not been observed consciously in a grounded way. It has not been given a clear frame, so it spreads. Avoidance keeps it abstract. And abstract pain is powerful because it has no boundaries. Think about a shadow in a dark room. When you refuse to turn on the light, your imagination fills in the gaps. The shadow could be anything. It feels large, threatening. But when you switch on the light, the shape becomes specific. It might still be uncomfortable, but it is defined. Observation reduces distortion. When you sit with a memory you have avoided and look at it calmly, something subtle shifts. You separate what actually happened from the story you built around it. You distinguish facts from interpretations. You notice details you had forgotten. You see your younger self with more context. That act of witnessing collapses exaggeration. For example, perhaps you were criticized publicly many years ago. The emotional charge remained. Without examining it, your mind may generalize. Speaking up leads to humiliation. So every time you are about to express an opinion, your body reacts as if public shame is inevitable. But when you revisit that original moment consciously, you may realize it was one person's reaction, in one environment, under specific circumstances. It was not a universal law. It was an event. Observation narrows the field. Right now, think of one experience you have avoided examining closely. Bring it to mind gently. Instead of reliving it emotionally, try to observe it as if you are watching a scene from a distance. Notice where you were, who else was present, what was actually said. As you do this, pay attention to your breathing. Does it change? Does your body tense? That reaction shows you the energy still attached to the memory. Stay with it for a few breaths. Now ask yourself, what did I conclude about myself in that moment? Often the most painful part is not the event itself, but the identity we formed because of it. I am not enough. I am unsafe. I cannot trust. These conclusions remain active until questioned. When you observe them directly, without rushing to push them away, they lose some of their power. Not because you deny the pain, but because you clarify it. You see the boundary between what happened and who you are. Avoidance keeps the memory alive in a diffuse state. Observation brings it into focus, and focus allows integration. Your mind does not repeat old pain to torture you. It repeats it because it remains unresolved. It is waiting for a moment of sufficient awareness, a moment when you can look at it without collapsing. And here is something important. Observation is not the same as rumination. Rumination circles the event with judgment and self-blame. Observation witnesses with curiosity and steadiness. One drains energy, the other reorganizes it. When you face what you avoided, you reduce the internal uncertainty around it. The nervous system begins to update. It realizes the threat is not current. It begins to release the constant scanning. But if you continue to run from it, the memory stays in that undefined state. It remains everywhere at once. It colors conversations, opportunities, even your sense of future. Observation defines the end of the cycle, and once something is clearly defined, something else becomes possible. Release. Not dramatic erasure, but a small shift, a softening, a sense that the memory no longer controls the room. That softening is the first sign that energy is becoming available again. Once a memory has been observed clearly, the next step is not analysis, it is release. Release does not mean pretending it did not matter. It does not mean forgiving before you are ready or forcing positivity. It means allowing the stored energy in your body to move instead of keeping it contained. Most unresolved experiences are not trapped in your thoughts. They are stored in sensation, tightness in the chest, a knot in the stomach, pressure behind the eyes. When you try to solve pain only with logic, you stay in the head. But the charge lives deeper. So begin in a simple way. Sit where you are and let your spine straighten gently. Do not make it rigid. Just awake. Take a slow breath in through your nose and let it out longer than you inhaled. As you exhale, imagine you are creating space inside your ribcage. Now bring to mind the experience you observed earlier, not the entire story, just enough to activate a mild sensation. You are not diving into the ocean. You are standing at the edge. Where does your body react? Scan slowly from your forehead to your jaw, down your neck, across your chest, through your abdomen. Notice any area that feels heavier, tighter, warmer, or colder than the rest. That is the address of the unfinished matter. Do not try to change it yet. Simply place your attention there. Attention is not passive. It is contact. When you keep breathing slowly and direct awareness to that spot, you are signaling safety to your nervous system. You are saying, we can look at this now. We are not in danger. Stay with the sensation for several breaths. If your mind tries to tell the story again, gently return to the physical feeling. The body does not need the full narrative. It needs presence. You might notice that the sensation shifts slightly. It may pulse, move, soften, or even intensify before it eases. That is normal. Energy that was frozen begins to thaw when met with steady attention. If emotions rise, let them. Tears, anger, sadness, these are movements. Movement is the opposite of stagnation. You do not need to dramatize it. Just allow it. Now, while still breathing slowly, say internally, this happened, and it is over. Not to deny its impact, but to mark time accurately. Many parts of you are still reacting as if the event is current. This sentence updates the system. Feel your feet on the ground. Notice the room around you. Bring your awareness to something stable in the present moment, a sound, a texture, the temperature of the air. This anchors you here and now. As you continue breathing, imagine that the tight area in your body has a boundary. Visualize it as a shape. It does not have to be perfect, just give it form. Then with each exhale, imagine that boundary becoming more porous, not exploding, just softening. You are not forcing anything out. You are allowing what is ready to leave. After a minute or two, ask yourself quietly, what did I need in that moment that I did not receive? Maybe it was understanding, protection, validation, support. Let the answer surface without judgment. Now imagine offering that missing element to your younger self in the memory, not as fantasy, but as internal completion. You might picture placing a hand on their shoulder, or simply saying, I see you. This simple act often reduces the charge more than endless thinking ever could. Notice your body again. Has the sensation shifted, even slightly? Sometimes release is dramatic. Often it is subtle. A 10% decrease in tension is progress. That is energy returning to you. You can repeat this process in short moments during your day. It does not require hours. When irritation appears, pause and locate it in the body. Breathe into it. Name it. Remind yourself that the original event is not happening now. The more you practice this, the less energy your system needs to maintain containment. And as containment relaxes, something interesting happens. Your internal frequency changes. When you are no longer bracing against the past, you begin to notice how often your attention is still tuned to survival. How many of your goals, even your desires, are shaped more by self-protection than expansion. When you carry unresolved weight, your system adapts to it so completely that you forget what lightness feels like. You say you want peace, connection, or abundance, but your nervous system is still tuned to self-preservation, and self-preservation has a very specific frequency. It scans, it anticipates, it protects. There is nothing wrong with that. Survival mode is intelligent, but it is narrow. It filters reality through the question, what could go wrong? And when that question dominates, it interrupts your alignment with anything new trying to enter your life. You might call it missed opportunities. You might call it bad timing. But often it is misalignment between what you consciously ask for and what your body is prepared to receive. Imagine holding a heavy box against your chest. Your arms are occupied. Someone offers you something valuable, but your hands are not free. It is not that life is refusing you. It is that you are still gripping what you never set down. Unresolved experiences anchor attention to the past. Even when you speak about the future, part of your energy remains backward-facing. That split weakens your presence, and presence is what allows you to recognize and act on meaningful moments. Think about how often you replay old conversations in your head, or how quickly your mind jumps to past failures when considering a new step. Each time that happens, your internal signal shifts from expansion to defense. Now pause and notice your posture. Are your shoulders slightly forward? Is your jaw tight? These small physical cues reveal the station you are tuned to. The body does not lie about its orientation. Take a slow breath and allow your shoulders to drop. Let your tongue relax at the bottom of your mouth. Feel your feet on the ground. This simple adjustment shifts your system out of subtle guarding. It may feel minor, but it changes the message your body sends to your brain. When your body feels safer, your perception widens. Interrupted synchronicity happens when you are so focused on avoiding repetition of the past that you cannot fully engage with what is unfolding now. You may walk into a room already braced. You may enter a conversation already cautious. That caution influences tone, posture, and response, and people feel it. Opportunities are relational. They arise in moments of connection, openness, and readiness. If your internal state is tight even slightly, you transmit hesitation, not consciously but subtly, and the world responds to that signal. This is not mystical thinking, it is behavioral science. Your nervous system shapes micro-expressions, timing, and decision-making. Those micro-adjustments alter outcomes. When you operate from unresolved fear, you choose differently than when you operate from grounded clarity. Consider a recent opportunity you did not pursue. Maybe you told yourself it was impractical, too risky, not the right time. Those reasons might be valid, but ask yourself honestly, was part of the hesitation rooted in an old experience that never healed? Let the question sit without rushing to defend your answer. Your internal frequency is shaped by what remains unresolved. If you were hurt in the past, you may unconsciously expect hurt again. If you were overlooked, you may expect to be overlooked. These expectations subtly influence where you place your attention. You notice evidence that confirms your fear more quickly than evidence that challenges it. This is not fate. It is selective perception. Take a moment and recall a time when you felt fully aligned, open, clear, unburdened. Notice how your body felt then, likely more upright, breathing more freely. In that state, you probably saw possibilities more easily. You engaged more naturally. That is coherence. When unresolved pain decreases, coherence increases. Your thoughts, emotions, and actions align. You respond rather than react. You choose rather than defend. But if your hands remain busy holding old weight, you cannot fully receive the present. The universe, life, chance, whatever word you prefer, does not withhold new experiences. It presents them constantly. The question is whether you are internally available. Availability requires release. As you let go of stored tension and redefine old narratives, your internal signal changes. You become less preoccupied with preventing repetition and more capable of participating in creation. And here is something few people say clearly. Your mind is not trying to sabotage your future. It is trying to protect you based on past data. When it replays memories or raises caution, it believes it is helping. What if those repetitions are not punishments, but invitations to update the system? There is a quiet misunderstanding that creates unnecessary suffering. When old memories resurface, when anxiety appears without warning, when your body tightens in situations that seem harmless, you may think your mind is working against you. It is not. Your mind is loyal, sometimes excessively loyal. It stores patterns that once kept you safe and replays them when it detects something similar. It does not measure time the way you do. It measures similarity. If today feels even slightly like yesterday's pain, it activates protection. That is not sabotage. That is pattern recognition. The problem is not that your mind remembers. The problem is that it has not received updated information. If a painful experience was never fully processed, your system still categorizes it as unresolved risk, and unresolved risk remains active in the background. Imagine a smoke alarm that went off years ago because of a real fire. After the fire, no one reset the system. The wiring still carries the memory of that emergency. Now, when you cook something simple and a little steam rises, the alarm reacts as if the house is burning again. You would not hate the alarm. You would understand that it is sensitive because it once had a reason to be. Your mind functions in the same way. When a memory surfaces repeatedly, it is not trying to drag you backward. It is trying to complete something that was interrupted. It is presenting unfinished material because it senses that you might now have the maturity, stability, or awareness that you did not have before. In earlier years, you may not have had the emotional tools to process what happened. You survived by minimizing, distracting, or pushing forward. That was intelligent at the time, but survival strategies are not meant to be permanent. Now, when the memory appears again, your first reaction might be frustration. Why am I still thinking about this? But what if the better question is, what is my system asking me to see now that I could not see then? Pause and consider one recurring thought that irritates you. Instead of trying to silence it, ask it gently. What are you protecting me from? You may be surprised by the answer. Often, beneath anger is fear. Beneath control is vulnerability. Beneath withdrawal is the desire not to be hurt again. Your mind does not create these reactions randomly. It creates them to shield you from repeating pain. But shielding and living are not the same. There comes a point when the same protective pattern that once saved you begins to restrict you. Your mind does not automatically know when that point arrives. It waits for you to intervene consciously. Take a slow breath and place your attention on your chest. Notice if there is tightness. Instead of trying to relax it immediately, say internally, "Thank you for trying to protect me." This may feel unusual, but gratitude toward your own defense softens internal conflict. When you fight your mind, tension increases. When you understand it, cooperation becomes possible. This shift is subtle but powerful. Instead of seeing yourself as broken, you begin to see yourself as adaptive. Instead of labeling your reactions as flaws, you recognize them as outdated solutions. Outdated does not mean useless. It means they were designed for a different version of your life. As you grow, your system must update, and updates require awareness. They require revisiting old data and reclassifying it. This was painful, but it is not happening now. This hurt me, but it does not define me. This risk existed, but it is not universal. When you consciously reinterpret the past, you send new signals to your nervous system. Over time, the alarm becomes less reactive. The defenses soften. The body begins to trust the present. Your mind is not your enemy. It is a guardian that has not yet been informed that the war is over. And if the war feels like it is still happening inside you, that is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign that something remains unresolved at a deeper level. There is a threshold every person reaches when the accumulated weight of unfinished experiences begins to outweigh the structure holding them together. In astrophysics, there is a concept called the event horizon. It is the invisible boundary around a black hole. Once something crosses that line, the pull becomes so strong that escape is no longer possible. Not because the object is weak, but because the gravitational force exceeds its capacity to resist. Something similar can happen in your inner life. There is a point where the weight of unresolved experiences becomes heavier than the structure you built to carry them. For years, you manage. You function, you keep moving. But gradually, the effort required to maintain control increases. You may start to feel that your reactions are no longer fully yours. Old triggers activate faster. Patience shortens. Decisions feel reactive instead of intentional. It is as if something unseen is pulling you. This is not dramatic collapse, it is subtle drift. When too much unfinished pain accumulates, it begins to bend your perception. Just like gravity bends light, unresolved memory bends interpretation. Neutral events start to look threatening. Constructive feedback feels like attack. Silence feels like rejection. The closer you move toward this internal horizon, the harder it becomes to separate past from present. Pause and think about an area of your life where you feel stuck in repetition. Maybe it is a type of relationship dynamic. Maybe it is financial stress that keeps cycling. Maybe it is a pattern of overworking and burnout. Ask yourself gently, at what point did this start to feel inevitable? Inevitable is a dangerous word. It suggests that you no longer believe you are steering. When unresolved pain remains active for long enough, it can shape identity. This is just how I am. This always happens to me. These statements are signs that gravity is increasing. They indicate that you are beginning to orbit an old story instead of questioning it. Your personal event horizon is not a sudden breakdown. It is the moment when you unconsciously surrender authorship of your life to unresolved history. And here is the quiet truth. Most people sense when they are approaching it. You feel more fatigued than usual, not just physically but emotionally. Small tasks require more effort. Joy feels distant. You may distract yourself more often because silence brings discomfort. These are signals, not failures. Take a slow breath and notice your body. Is there a heaviness in your chest or stomach when you think about certain areas of your life? That heaviness is weight, emotional mass that has not been released. The longer you carry it, the stronger its pull becomes. But unlike a black hole, your inner gravity is not irreversible. Awareness changes the equation. The moment you recognize that a pattern is not destiny but residue, you create space. Even a small realization, this reaction belongs to the past, weakens the pull. It reminds you that you are not trapped inside an unchangeable force. However, if you ignore the signals long enough, autopilot takes over. You stop questioning reactions. You justify them. You normalize tension. You tell yourself that this is adulthood, responsibility, reality. It is not reality, it is accumulation. When accumulation exceeds integration, you feel compressed. Your creativity shrinks. Your willingness to risk decreases. You choose the familiar, even if the familiar is painful because it feels predictable. That is how gravity holds you. Consider a decision you have postponed for a long time, something you know needs attention but keeps getting delayed. What stops you? Is it practical limitation, or is it the fear of stirring old emotions you have avoided? Often we delay change not because we lack clarity, but because we sense that addressing it will require confronting unresolved layers beneath it. This is the threshold, the line between continuing to orbit the past and stepping into conscious authorship. The good news is that reaching this horizon can also become a turning point. The discomfort becomes strong enough that avoidance is no longer sustainable. The weight becomes undeniable. And when weight becomes undeniable, transformation becomes necessary. The question then is not whether the past existed. It did. The question becomes whether it will remain an anchor pulling you inward, or whether it can be converted into something that supports you instead of collapsing you. There is a point in every process of healing that feels small on the outside, but changes everything on the inside. It is not dramatic, it is not loud, it is a quiet shift in meaning. Resolution is often misunderstood. People think it means deleting the past, forgetting what happened, or pretending it no longer matters. But true resolution is not erasure, it is transformation. Imagine pressure deep within the earth. Over time, heat and compression turn raw material into something dense and clear. The original elements are still there, but their structure has changed. What was once unstable becomes solid. The same is possible with your pain. When you face an unresolved experience fully, feel what needs to be felt and allow your nervous system to update. Something condenses. The chaotic fragments begin to organize into insight. The emotional charge decreases. The memory remains, but it no longer controls your reactions. This is the singularity of resolution, the moment when the story stops defining you and starts informing you. Think about a difficult event from your life that over time became a lesson rather than a wound. At first, it may have felt unbearable, but eventually, after reflection and honesty, it revealed something about your boundaries, your values, or your strength. The event did not disappear. It changed position. It moved from an open wound to a reference point. Resolution does not make you smaller. It integrates the experience into your identity in a stable way. Pause for a moment and bring to mind one unresolved memory you have been working with. Notice how it feels now compared to when you first began looking at it. Even if the shift is subtle, is there more clarity, slightly less charge, a bit more distance? That shift is evidence of integration. When resolution begins, the body responds first. Breathing becomes deeper without effort. Muscles release tension that has been held for years. Sleep improves. Your reactions slow down. Instead of being pulled immediately into defense, you have a fraction of a second of choice. That fraction of a second is freedom. Resolution also changes how you narrate your life. Instead of saying, "Oh, that ruined me," you may find yourself saying, "That shaped me." The language softens, and language reflects internal structure. You stop needing the past to justify your present reactions. You no longer rely on old pain to explain who you are. You see the experience clearly, but you are not fused with it. This does not happen through denial. It happens through repetition of awareness, through returning to the memory calmly, through allowing the body to release what it held, through questioning the conclusions you formed in moments of fear. Over time, the energy that was locked inside the unresolved experience becomes available again, and that reclaimed energy does not disappear. It fuels creativity, it supports courage, it strengthens discernment. Something else changes as well. Your relationship with uncertainty improves. When you are no longer carrying unresolved weight, the future feels less threatening. You are not constantly scanning for repetition. You trust your capacity to handle what arises because you have already faced what was behind you. Resolution creates internal stability, and stability is not rigidity. It is grounded flexibility. You can bend without breaking. You can engage without collapsing. There is also humility in this process. You realize that pain was not meaningless, but it was never meant to be permanent. The lesson was always the valuable part. The suffering was the rough material around it. As resolution deepens, gratitude may appear, not for the harm itself, but for the growth that came from integrating it. You begin to see how much energy you spent carrying something that no longer needed to be carried. And here is the final shift. When the past transforms from anchor to foundation, you stop bracing for life and start participating in it. Your mind, once exhausted from holding unfinished material, begins to rest. Not because life becomes perfect, but because the weight is no longer chaotic. It is organized, it has meaning. And when meaning replaces disorder, the space inside you expands. Your mind is not tired because it is weak. It is tired because it has been carrying weight that was never meant to be permanent. Every unresolved memory, every suppressed emotion, every defense you built to survive added another stone to the backpack. But you are not that backpack. You are the one who can take it off. Nothing we talked about requires drama. It requires honesty, a pause, a breath, the courage to look at what still lives inside you and gently say, "This is over. I am here now." When you resolve, you do not erase your past. You reclaim your energy. If you made it all the way here, write this in the comments. I choose to release what no longer serves me. That tells me you are ready. And if this resonated with you, watch one of the videos on your screen right now. If you want more depth like this, stay with me.